Hi.
How y'all doing?
Happy Sunday or Monday.
Or Monday if you happen to be on the other side of the world.
Or watching it
down
in the future.
under.
Happy any day. Just
That's
be
true.
happy.
Happy Thursday. Happy every day.
Who's going to be first today?
I don't know.
We have our lag.
I don't know, as Adam always says.
I don't know.
I don't know. Like, it's a declaration of independence. I don't know.
Awesome.
Maybe no. Oh, no one's going to be first today.
No. We use a soft. We don't do this straight into Facebook. We use an interim software so that we can put your questions up. And as a result, we get a lag. So here they come. Here
Heather!
they come.
Heather was first. Hi, Anne. Hi, Laurel.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Lynn from Phoenix with the hummingbirdies.
You got to slow down so that everyone can see the same things.
Okay.
And she's very excited to see you all.
Yes, I am.
Can't keep up. All right. Hello, Stephen from Burbank.
Hello, Stephen from Burbank.
And Marie from New Jersey.
Can I just shout out names like Deirdre? Yay. Marianne, you're here.
Sure.
Melanie
It's
and
your
Trisha
show.
and Gwen and Jane. Woo! It's our show. It's all of our show. Yeah? Yeah. Ute Ann. Ooh, good name. More. Becky and Cindy and Eugenia. Oh, fabulous. From Santa Cruz, from Georgia. The country or the state? We don't know.
Sicily.
The state. Sicily. Hello, Gina from
cool.
Sicily. So nice to have you here. How cool is that?
From New York. We got some Boston.
From Lake Havasu. I know Lake Havasu. That's Maureen from Lake Havasu.
All right. Wow. Thank you guys all for showing up to hear about Nemesis.
Everybody needs one.
Yeah. Got to have a Nemesis,
So I
right?
talked about Nemesis for a while.
This is new to me. I will be taking notes.
Okay.
Here.
She'll be back for the question and answer period. Okay. So Nemesis, as I'm sure you know, was the goddess here. Yeah, that's better. Was the goddess assigned to level people's playing field when they had too much hubris. In other words, they got a little too into their own egos, and Nemesis was the goddess who would come and like, pow, give them exactly the retribution that was justified. But what's interesting about Nemesis, to pluralize it, is that in order to have a good hero, you actually have to have a nemesis in a story. So if you have Batman without the Joker, and he's just running around after ordinary criminals and he's Batman, there is just no contest. He doesn't have to rise to anything because he has superpowers and no one else does. All the other ones, Superman without, who is the bad guy in Superman? Lex Luthor. Without Lex Luthor, Superman just runs around saving cats and stopping traffic accidents. Not as interesting, right? Without the 12 labors of Hercules, it's just a really strong guy hanging around the gym with his friends. Not as interesting. So a nemesis is also, it's come to mean in modern English, something that it dogs you. Like, it's something that will not let you go. A negative feature of your life that just comes back and comes back and comes back, like a cold sore or something. Maybe a cold sore is your nemesis. Or it's something that is so dark and so strong that it dominates you. Like you live through some kind of natural disaster and then you have nightmares about it and you have trigger effects for PTSD and the thing just destroys your life. Then that becomes your nemesis. So my premise is that every story actually needs a nemesis, including each of our own stories. And I don't even think of the nemesis energy as negative. It's like the wind that blows against the kite to make it fly higher, right? So like in my book, Diana herself, Diana is the hero of the story, but she has to have a nemesis who is, you know, her one-time lover, Roy Richards. And he has to be really, really evil. It has to start out with, she's not very impressive and he doesn't look that impressive. Well, he looks more impressive than she does. But as his evil comes out, she has to rise to deal with that level of controversy, of pressure against good. So she becomes much, much bigger and better because she has to fight against something really, really dark and evil. So I was having a problem with one of my nemesis the other day. And Rose said to me, why don't you think of this as a person who is right now here to help you break out of a pattern? And the pattern itself is actually your nemesis. And if you can deal with this in a way that you haven't dealt with it before, you'll break through that karmic pattern, which takes us sort of back to the old Greek concept of nemesis, where you have to do exactly the right action to form retribution. I was thinking about this when I was in graduate school. A lot of you know that one of the nemesis in one of my books is Harvard. I have friends who say they drink a shot every time I say the word Harvard, so sorry. But I was just watching a film about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and it brought back all the Harvard thing. And I was remembering, you know, because I started there when I was 17, didn't get my PhD until I was like 28 or something. So I always had this big looming thing on. I had massive amounts of things to do to get through Harvard over and over again. And it was really my nemesis. And I had a graduate advisor, and he was one of the people who told me I had to institutionalize my son when he was born, that my career just could not go forward if I didn't put Adam away. And he was, I think he was being kind in his own language. I don't think he was bad or some sort of diabolical thing, but his values went right against what I was doing at the time. And so I was trudging around. I'd gone back to Utah after Adam was born because I just couldn't hang around Harvard where everybody thought I'd done something so wrong by not choosing to terminate pregnancy when I found out that Adam had Down syndrome. And so I'd gone back to Utah, and I'd taken a job there while I was finishing my dissertation. And I would fly back to Boston to meet with my advisors. And this particular advisor was a real bear. And when he didn't just tell me I should institutionalize Adam, he used a lot of colorful language. English was not his first language. And I think when he picked it up, he thought that certain words like the F word were just, emphatic, not so much obscene as just strong. So he used a lot of those words when he talked to you about yourself and your work. You effing idiot, for example, was one of his favorite things to call me. So I talked to a couple of other students, and they said, no, he's a nightmare. He happened to be in a very important position, though. So they were like, go to this professor. He'll help you work around this nemesis guy. And I was like, I just couldn't get this guy out of my life. And one day I was trudging around my job in Utah, and I thought, what if I go right at it? What if I make him, my nemesis, if I ask him to be the chairman of my dissertation committee? What if I put him squarely in charge of whether or not I get my PhD? And I thought, it's such a counterintuitive move, because everybody was saying, just get away from him, get away from him. And I got into the elevator in this building in Utah, and I'm going up in the elevator with a bunch of people, and a guy I had never met said, oh, you're Martha Beck, right? I was like, uh-huh. He said, yeah, I spent some time at the University of Michigan with a guy who's now at Harvard, and you might know him. And he named the nemesis figure. And I was like, why, yes, I do know him. He just called me an effing idiot several times to my face. And the guy in the elevator goes, yeah, well, he's really scary. He has that facade. But I promise you, if you can just look past that and be brave enough to deal with him, he'll make sure you get your PhD. And I had never met this man. I was in Utah, the last place I would expect to meet people who knew this other guy. And just out of nowhere on the elevator, he just drops this information. So I thought, okay, that's it. I'm putting this guy in as the chairman of my dissertation committee. So I did. And I remember he told me I was an effing idiot for doing it. and that he was going to make it as hard on me as he possibly could. And I was like, so what else is new? And then he gave me some really, really negative feedback on my dissertation. And he basically said, I was writing a dissertation on women's roles. And he said, I don't give a crap about this. Only he didn't say crap. He said, if it doesn't pertain to me personally, I am not interested in reading it. So I went back to my hotel room. I was so pissed off. And I called a friend and she said, you've got to get rid of him. You've just got to. And I was like, no, he's right. He's actually right. If I cannot make this information, which was about marginalized individuals, women, traditional cultures, people of color, if I can't make it interesting to him, then it's not universal. It doesn't apply to everybody. I have to find a way to make it universal. And what that did was it made me enlarge the scope of my research until I was looking at things that just happened to people under stress, particular kinds of stress. And I knew this man had felt that particular kind of stress. And so I rewrote my whole dissertation, and he told me I was an effing idiot and that there were no subheadings in it, and that it was a piece of crap and it was way too long. And I changed the font. I made a couple of changes, but I don't think he'd actually read it very closely. So I made the changes I thought were right. I put it in a different font and I sent it back and it passed. But the fact is, I actually am proud of that piece of work, though I would never suggest anyone read it. At Harvard, we used to have this fun joke among all the PhD candidates. This is how it goes. This is how you talk to a PhD candidate. You say, hey, what's your dissertation about? And then as soon as they start talking, you go, because no one has ever written an interesting PhD dissertation ever. I say that in all integrity, no. Anyway, my point is, I recognized this guy had caused me many sleepless nights, and there were times when I wanted to wring his neck, and I was very frightened of him. But when I turned around and went straight at it and thought, maybe this is an energy designed to make me wake up, I started getting those God winks. I started getting the messages from the universe that say, now you're on track. Now you're on track. If you can handle this guy, you will rise to a new level of the game, and he will help you. So the concept of the Nemesis as a helper figure, it became really important to me. And now, because things are always coming up that nag us, right? And I still try to find where that energy is trying to make me break out of an old pattern and go to a higher level of the game. For Oprah Magazine recently, I was coaching a woman who had lived through Hurricane Harvey in Houston, and it was if you read the magazine, you'll see us talking. It's mainly her describing the hurricane and me saying, "Wow, sounds weird," but Harvey was her nemesis. She was having constant nightmares. She had severe PTSD. I mean, she went through bad stuff because of Hurricane Harvey. She thought she'd lost her husband. She thought she would die. She lost almost all her possessions. But by the end of 3 sessions with her, where we addressed the PTSD, and then we started talking about different ways to see Harvey, and we analyzed one of her nightmares, which was about Harvey. And in the dream, I said, you have to, so when we analyzed the dream, and she dreamed about Harvey, the way my coaches and I do dream analysis is that you have to become the symbol in the dream and talk to the dreamer yourself. So she was really good at it, and she became Harvey. And she was basically there to say to the dreamer, you need to open up your heart. You need to open up your life. And all this catastrophe has come to crack you open so that your inner wounds can heal. And then she started saying, oh yeah, before that, before the hurricane, I had this and I had this and I had this going on in my life. And all of those have cracked open because I just can't handle that and the PTSD. So she was going off to a writing camp because she's a brilliant writer, a poet. And I said, maybe you'll end up writing an essay called My Friend Harvey, because this nemesis, the hurricane, is actually really, really helping you wake up. So what I did in the elevator, deciding that I was going to make this guy the chairman of my dissertation, and what this woman did, her name was Heather, in the dream analysis to become the Nemesis and start to speak with the voice of the Nemesis. If you can do that, all kinds of interesting information will come out. So just before I go to questions, I will tell you an exercise to do. Write the name of your nemesis, whether it's a person or a situation or, you know, an addiction, whatever it is. Write it on a piece of paper, and then you can write a letter to it and say, I hate your guts, and write all the reasons you hate your nemesis's guts, and then switch to a new piece of paper and write a letter to you from your nemesis about how your nemesis is there to wake you up and to change you in radically, dramatically positive ways. Even if the nemesis doesn't know it, there's a sort of higher self dynamic where that will come out. And I know it sounds odd. I'm actually asking you to stop and walk toward your nemesis just by doing the exercise, but you can crack your whole life open by doing that. I kid you not. So now I will answer questions about nemesis. Ro is back looking at the questions.
Yeah, we have a question from Donna who says, what if you bring your nemesis close, as I have done, and self-doubt grows? I tend to step out of integrity with my nemesis to attempt to protect myself. How do I stay in integrity with my nemesis?
You have to not be afraid of the conflict. You have to be willing to say things to the nemesis that are true and not pleasant. And you have to try to be calm while you say them. It's not that necessary, but I remember once with this dissertation dude, he wrote me a particularly abusive email. And I actually called him and I said, yeah, I want to talk about this feedback, but first of all, I just have a question for you. Is this just the way you teach, or do you hate me personally? Because there's a lot of very angry language in this email. And he said, oh, that's just how I teach. I don't have anything against you personally. And I was like, okay, then let's go forward. He did not stop being abusive. And I came to actually love the grumpy old dude. So yeah, you have to be willing to deal with conflict and to be honest about what you're feeling, to ask the hard questions, to say, I don't deserve to be treated that way, or I will not tolerate being treated that way. Those of you who have an addict as part of if you're living in a relationship with an addict, you know that you have to be willing to make super hard choices. Like, look, if you're going to keep drinking, you can no longer live in my house, things like that. It can get very, very tough. But as you do that, you'll be breaking a karmic pattern in yourself that allows people to take advantage of you, for example. That's just an example. But it's scary. It's going to be scary. The conflict or the interaction with the nemesis in every movie is the high drama of the piece. And if you can keep it completely calm, you get an A+++ from the universe. But if you don't keep it calm, you still need to do it.
Cool. Jillian asks, what about people who are inauthentic and deluded? Can these people be nemesis?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, absolutely. I mean, I actually coached a woman once who was kidnapped by a psychopath and handcuffed to a refrigerator for like 3 days. And it was an ex-boyfriend, and she had to try to figure out how to deal with him. And he was completely crazy. So this is I hope none of us on the gathering room today ever has to deal with a situation like that. But what you do then in absolutely more than any other time is you have to find your own truth. You have to find your own integrity, and you have to trust your own instincts. And that is, in fact, what she did. She got really, really clear. And later, when you have PTSD, you'll work through the suffering of it. But there's a thing when someone's truly insane, you can either go into their insanity with them, or you can look at it and you can say, okay, that's crazy, and that's not me. And that may be the actual nemesis, to look at the madness and say, okay, now I know what totally delusional looks like, and I don't have that. I'm not buying it anymore. I just read Educated by a woman who's raised by a very, very crazy father, Mormon, Idaho. And there are these beautiful moments where she's a teenager and she finally realizes that her father's ranting is not, in fact, true for her. So that right there, saying my truth is mine and it can be different from yours, that may be the most important role of the nemesis of all, to make you see your own truth instead of sharing the social madness around you.
Yeah, this follows on quite well from that. Janice says, so the nemesis is there to highlight a blind spot.
Yeah. Or a spot where you know darn well you need to work, but you haven't been able to break the chain. You haven't been able to break the pattern of negativity. Just over and over and over, we'll marry an addict until we can get rid of the addict and not get rid of the pattern. You'll just end up with another addict until you finally break your codependency. And then you may know you're codependent. Has anybody read Autobiography in 5 Short Chapters? It starts with, I walk down the street, there's a huge hole in the street. I'm paraphrasing. I fall in, it's dark, it takes me forever to get out. Second one is I go down the same street, I fall into the hole. I know it's there, but I fall in anyway. It takes me a while to get out. Third chapter, I walk down the same street, I fall in the hole, I get out right away. Chapter 4, I walk down the same street, I go around the hole. Chapter 5, I walk down a different street. So that can be the role of the nemesis, to help us walk down a different street.
Even if we have to confront them with different faces or different,
yeah, you start to see patterns and then break patterns. And it's the breaking of the pattern that in the East is seen as a karmic shift, not just a psychological one. So
yeah, so I think it's important, like just reading through the questions, just to highlight that the nemesis is a function. It's not actually the person standing before you. It's the function of what that can give to you.
Yeah, if you think of it all as a movie starring you, which your life is, it's a character in that drama. And it doesn't even, the person standing in front of you, like if you don't like a certain politician, it's not that person. Another person would come to fill that in. It's that part of the drama. And the person playing the nemesis is often suffering a great deal. So yeah, this is not about blame and hate. It's about breaking our own patterns.
Yeah.
Including blame and hate, actually.
Thanks for the little Joni Mitchell lyrics there, Heather. That's awesome. Monica asks, what if you are your own nemesis?
Good question. We are all our own nemesis, I would say. And
yeah, I know I am.
As I've said probably before here, when I wrote this book with Diana and the villain Roy Richards, they were both based on aspects of myself. The ones I wish I had were the hero, and the ones I know I have were the nemesis, the villain. And I hope I'm not like actually a serial killer and stuff. But it was all based on exaggerated pieces of my own psyche. So definitely the doom and gloom you feel is all coming from your own wrestling with patterns. And once you're free from all your negative patterns, there's an interesting thing. There's a very Teflon quality to people who have made friends with the nemesis in all aspects of the self. They don't end up in the wrong relationships anymore. I mean, you may have experienced this where you broke a pattern and something that had happened over and over and over again finally stopped happening. I'm watching this happen with someone I know with money right now. Someone who's always like stayed up at a very low level of income, because as soon as she would get something, she would have a car accident and need medical coverage or whatever, and did a lot of work. And I felt the shift in her energy. And then she started to be able to like get a job and hold it. So you may have had the experience of coming out of one of your own patterns, and you look back and you say, oh, I did that because it was always in me. It was always me who, burnt down the house as soon as I got a little money. It was my own pattern. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Geordie is asking about the space between when you recognize the nemesis and see its utility and then what you do with it from there. I think our camera I think we're back.
Oh, okay.
So she says, can you talk about that space between realizing the nemesis is useful and finding the stuff within to deal with that from a place of strength?
Yeah, one of the things is to not pretend you're more enlightened than you are and start saying, oh, it's all just meant to be and everything. Because the nemesis will come to push your buttons, but good. Like, part of the process of breaking the pattern is to access all the emotion that is connected to it. So when someone comes to break the pattern, like I get to a point where I got to a point where I was very life coachy about everything, and I was just sort of coaching everyone that came. And I started getting people to confront me who would say, stop doing that, you moron. You're just patronizing me. Get down off your damn pedestal. And, you know, and it was like, that was a scary thing for me, but it was absolutely right on. But oh my God, did I have emotion when I came out of that insulated coach role and just started being an open, vulnerable human being. Oh my God, it was horrific. But what happened is I faced a lot of my own inner demons, my own thoughts of that I had to protect myself from the world, and I just sort of laid myself open, and then healing occurs. And you find out that what you thought was a suit of armor was actually a coffin of sorts, and that you, without it, thank God the nemesis came to shatter the shell and set me free. Yeah.
Brilliant. Sorry, guys.
You're going to have a lot of feelings, is my point. You're going to hate the nemesis. You're going to be afraid of the nemesis. You're going to be really sad because of the nemesis. The whole range of emotion is going to be there if it's really your nemesis. This is not just an ordinary villain. This is the big bad of your life.
Bad. And this is Anne-Marie's just quoting Oprah saying, if you don't change the pattern, the problem will show up wearing a different pair of pants.
That's why they pay her the big bucks.
That's right. And
too.
As we know. And so Marianne's asking, how do we recognize it if it comes in a different form each time?
Because it feels the same.
Okay.
It's like food poisoning. It could come in seafood one day and chicken the next day and bad pasta a third day. But when you feel that thing in your guts and you are projectile barfing all over everything in the world, it's like, oh, this is food poisoning. I remember this. And it's the same thing if you'll get into it with somebody, say you're with angry people in relationships, and then you get in with a Zen monk and he's very chill and everything. And within 2 weeks, suddenly something will snap and he'll become the angry Zen monk. And you'll say, oh, this is the same feeling. That's how you know you're in a pattern. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, there are such good questions tonight. Oh, I just don't even know how to choose. Donna, sorry, I'm going for Donna again. How do you distinguish between a nemesis and judgment or bias?
Judgment or bias is going to be there, and you're going to feel righteous about it. You'll feel those things when your nemesis comes in, unless you're too terrified, but you will definitely go through the phase of judgment and blame, like me with my dissertation advisor. I went through a phase of thinking, what a jerk. I mean, yeah, how dare he speak to me that way? And I blamed him, like when he gave me all that really nasty feedback. And, that male chauvinist pig, if this dissertation isn't about him, he won't even read it. Elitist, white male. And then I had to go past it to hear what was true in what he was telling me, that I really did want my message to be universal. And to do that, I was going to have to dig deeper and do more research and break through patterns that in society that nobody had broken through yet intellectually. So it's when you get through the judgment and there's still something there, they're going, wait, there's a gift in here. It's not all them bad, me good. I need to change as well. That's the gift of the nemesis. Yes, it is.
Cool. So Janet's asking, what if the nemesis is just energy draining in a subtle way and that makes it hard to confront?
Ooh, yeah, energy vampires. It's very weird how they're perfectly nice, but every time you have lunch with them, you just have to go lie down for the rest of the day. It's very important to realize that energy is a true force, a real force. One of the things that's happened to me before is I've been helping people get out of abusive relationships, and I started to feel super drained. This is way back when I was coaching. I started to feel really drained and like strange energy. And then they would come in as a couple, and I would recognize the energy that I had been attacking me as belonging to the abusive partner whom I'd never met before. But it would be like, oh, that's you. Oh, wow, I get it. And it took a lot of that before I finally said, look, energy is real. I don't care. I get that I can't prove what it is and I can't measure it, but it's really affecting me and it's really draining me. And I need to actually treat it as if it's real. And I need to learn how to use my own energy so that I can say, no, you don't get to come in. So the energy of the Nemesis doesn't get to come in. One of the interesting things I've noticed about Nemesis people who are dark in a lot of ways and who play that role in a lot of people's lives is that they use energy very knowingly. They're practically psychic, and they actually know how to be an energy vampire, and they know how to direct the beam of whatever it is. So it's almost like there's no fair playing field until you realize that energy is a real force and that you can learn to be strong energetically. And I will tell you a hint. I'll tell you very quickly because we're at the end. I did a lot of training to deal with this negative energy. And the strongest thing that I figured out to do is to very vividly picture myself as a tall tree, like a really massive oak or sequoia or something like that, where everything at ground level is just solid and everything soft and open to the light is facing upward toward the sky. And so all the energy coming in comes from up there, and nothing around me at my level is going to be able to do anything but just bump into me and fall off. That particular image helped me through a lot of sticky situations. So I highly recommend it.
I love it.
Yeah, so some really interesting stuff today, and we're over time, but try that exercise. Go write a letter to your Nemesis, and then write a letter back from your Nemesis describing how the Nemesis, often against their own conscious intention, is actually there to help you, and maybe one of the most benevolent figures you will meet in your whole life.
Yeah.
And technology is my Nemesis, but it came.
Also the clock.
It came and it went, and the clock. Time is my Nemesis. So I'm going to go face it now, and I see you later.
We'll see you next week, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.